What's up, NBA fan? What's up, all sports fan? This your boy JB, host of the Behind the Bench podcast network and channel. Just want to give a shout out to the rest of the crew. I'm talking about Shad, Kelvin, and Jermaine, along with Kobe Bryant Film Room and Big Dog Sports TV. Just want to say what's up to the crew, and for everyone who's tuning in, I hope that you support Behind the Bench, which you have been doing so. Become a subscriber, which you have been doing so, and help make this show the best that it can be, which you have been doing so. And everyone from the Behind the Bench crew appreciate the feedback and the comments that you provide on our videos. And like I said, it's a winning combination, and we're really trying to deliver sports content the way it's meant to be. No angles, no narratives, strictly responding to what we see during the heat of competition. NBA, NFL, MLB, But since this is the basketball season, during the regular season, I should say, I want to talk about last night's action in the NBA, particularly the game involving the Memphis Grizzlies and the Los Angeles Lakers. And the Grizzlies, who struggled during the first quarter of the season, actually the first 25 games of the season, and then Ja Morant made his debut, and ever since then they've been playing much better, and it showed last night. And see, what happened last night proves to me that, number one, if you really think about it, now remember last year, Memphis was rolling. They was rolling about halfway through the season, and then their starting center, Steven Adams, suffered a knee injury, and he missed the rest of last year, and he's out for the entirety of this season. So his presence is truly missed on defense. And at the time, he was leading the league in rebounding. And then their backup center, who's a very athletic at his position, Brandon Clark, he injures his Achilles last March with a month to go in the regular season. So they was missing a starting center and their backup center leading into the playoffs, coupled with the situation off court with Ja Morant. They was kind of in flux. But if they had been whole the whole time, the entire time, there's a distinct possibility that the Memphis Grizzlies could have finished the season as the top seed in the West. If not Denver. I'll put it this way. If Denver had not clinched the number one seed, it very well could have been Memphis. But what I'm trying to say is that playoff series where the Lakers beat Memphis in that first round, that was not a true measure of both teams. Because if Memphis was whole facing the Lakers in the postseason, they would have beat the Lakers soundly. They'd have beat them soundly. And last night showed that, as the Grizzlies beat the Lakers by the score of 127-113. And what's crazy about it is, as he tends to do, LeBron James, he scored in a flurry in the first quarter. But as they say, it's not how you start, it's how you finish up. And then the Lakers got into like a double-digit lead early on. And then Memphis started to, regain the momentum of the contest, and by halftime, I believe it was a 1-point game led by the Lakers. But you can kind of tell that eventually Memphis was going to take control of the game, and they did so in the most definitive way in that fourth quarter, where they just, broke the game wide open and was hitting one 3-point shot after the next. Led by Marcus Smart. Let me see, Marcus Smart Actually led by Jaren Jackson, who had 31 points. And he matched Anthony Davis, who also had 31 points, tit for tat. But Marcus Smart really kept him in the game until Memphis took it over. He had 29 points. And then Desmond Bane, he was hitting big shots down the stretch. Desmond Bane is a heck of a player. He's tough. You know what I'm saying? And then Ja Morant had 21 points. So they had 4 players last night score 20 points or more. And then let's see, Zaire Williams off the bench contributed 15 points. And then Bismack Biyombo, 6 points and 10 rebounds. So what I'm trying to say is, man, what I'm trying to say is, when you look at the Lakers box score, LeBron had 32, but he scored like 17 in the first quarter, if I'm not mistaken. And then 17, 18 points in the first quarter. Anthony Davis did finish up with 31 points, as I mentioned. Austin Reeves is a good player. He's a good player. He had 19 points and 12 assists, and then Taurean Prince had 10 points. But the problem is, now see, Austin Reeves was brought in by the Lakers through their scouting department as an undrafted player. And as I've alluded to many times, the Lakers scouting department is really second to none. But what's sad about it, you know, when they drafted that original young core during that 4-year run from 2014 to 2018, all that hard work and all that scouting, hours of scouting that they, you know, exercise was for naught, as all them players are gone and they miss them dearly because the so-called supporting cast or the complimentary players that the Lakers brought in this offseason or traded for last year midseason, they're not panning out because they're not legitimate starters. And I'm referring to Jared Vanderbilt. Lakers signed him to a 4-year contract this offseason. I believe it was like 4 years, $48 million. And they was convinced that he can be their starting power forward as Anthony Davis continued to play the 5. But he was scoreless last night, and he's been scoreless a lot of games this year since he returned back from injury. Christian Wood had 11 points, but it was academic, no real impact on the game. Cam Reddish only had 8 points in the starting lineup. He's not a starter. Jackson Hayes, who they signed this offseason from the New Orleans Pelicans, he's not even part of the rotation. Gabe Vincent, who they signed to 3 years, $33 million. He's been injured. As a matter of fact, I think he underwent some kind of knee scope procedure where he's going to be out, you know, to be determined. Rui Hachimura suffered a calf strain. He's going to be reevaluated in a week. They don't know when he's going to return. D'Angelo Russell is injured. You know what I'm saying? With that, I think he suffered a tailbone injury in the game last week versus the Minnesota Timberwolves. So what I'm trying to say is, at the end of the day, they say the Lakers have 2 of the top 10 players in the league, LeBron James and Anthony Davis. If that's the case, this team should not be below 500. They should not be below 500. But the problem is the franchise has been operating backwards ever since they signed LeBron James to this team. And they have mortgaged the franchise off year after year after year after year after year after year. Not 1, not 2, not 3, not 4, not 5, not 6 consecutive years. No pun intended. So the more you mortgage your future off, the lesser talented players that you have to rely on year after year to, number one, to fill the roster with, and number 2, to try to compete in the NBA. It's a losing formula. That's why they never should have went this route. Memphis has been building itself up ever since 2018. And like I said, if it wasn't for injuries, the Memphis Grizzlies, if Denver had not clinched the number 1 seed, the Memphis Grizzlies very well could have did it. because Denver clinched the #1 seed last year with a record of 53-29, if I'm not mistaken. Well, 2 seasons ago, the Memphis Grizzlies won 55 games and clinched the #2 seed. This team is tough. And this Western Conference, okay, let's look. You look at the conference. Look at what the Clippers did last night versus the New Orleans Pelicans. And I like the Pelicans. I'm a fan of what they're doing. But at the end of the day, I know it's just one game, but it just shows how tough this conference is going to be. And the Lakers are descending further and further down the standings. They're now 11th place as we speak. And they have to face the Clippers tomorrow, who's on a roll. That's an L coming. That's a loss coming. They're going to be 3 games under 500. 3 games under 500. And see, the problem is the youth-driven teams, they're going to win out when they play the Lakers because the it's like a domino effect. The decline and the tailspin is going to mount. It's going to mount. It's going to mount because you're going to face one competitive team after the next, and the Lakers not ill-equipped to compete in the conference. And the problem is you have a situation where, because of having that dude on the team, that they've been telling fans ever since it started that they're in win now mode. But the formula is so counterproductive to where when they say it's championship or bust, the problem is they don't have a roster equipped to even reach the playoffs outright. Even after they made the mid-season overhaul last year, they still had to go through the play-in to get to the playoffs. That's the problem that they're having. Because the talent, the complementary talent is not there. And this is the byproduct. This is what happens when you let go of trade a Brandon Ingram off only 3 years into his career at 21 years old. This is what happens when you trade away a Josh Hart, who was helping the Knicks solidify their roster and be a very good physical team in the Eastern Conference, who went into Philadelphia last night and beat the Sixers soundly on the road. The Knicks have improved. The Pelicans, even though they lost last night, they'll rebound from that because they have too much talent on the team not to. They still have a better record than the Lakers. The Clippers have a better record than the Lakers. Sacramento wins the games for the most part they should win, particularly at home. They have a better record than the Lakers. Dallas continues to roll with Luka Doncic, an MVP candidate, and then Kyrie Irving back in the lineup. They have a better record than the Lakers. That's not to mention the Houston Rockets, who have improved from last year. They have a better record than the Lakers. And even the Golden State Warriors, who have struggled this year, they now have a better record than the Lakers. And the Lakers are only 1 game ahead of the Utah Jazz in the West, who have improved since their top players have returned back from injury. Minnesota has a better record than the Lakers. Oklahoma City Thunder has a better record than the Lakers. The Denver Nuggets, defending champions, definitely have a better record than the Lakers. You see where this is headed? And if Memphis continues to put together wins, now they've had to reach the playoffs this year because they've had to dig themselves out of this hole, missing Ja Morant the first 25 games of the year, as well as injuries to other guys, even guys who they brought in from last year, Luke Kennard, and then this year in Derrick Rose. And I think Marcus Smart was out a couple games too. So what I'm trying to say is the record that the Memphis Grizzlies have so far, that's not a true indication of who they are as a team. I believe Memphis fundamentally is better than the Lakers. If they was whole, that game would have been a blowout last night before they actually blew the game wide open. So what I'm trying to say, and this is where fans of this team and what fans of LeBron James got to understand is the franchise has exhausted itself of all assets and all capital. And they cannot continue to go down this road and mortgage anything else off. Because if they do, then you're talking about a situation where they will not exist and be part of the NBA landscape until this new decade start 6 years from now. And that's just saying to the point where they can move beyond this finally and start to rebuild again as a franchise. I'm not even talking about being competitive. This is what happens when you mortgage your future off. Because if you add all the pieces of the puzzle together, you can clearly see that they've mortgaged off a decade. That's why they have to overhaul this roster every year. That's why they have to cross their fingers and hope the players that they bring in can help this team succeed. But they don't have the talent to do it for the role that they're being asked to play. That's the problem. And it makes them look bad. You see? So what I'm trying to say, this guy's formula of building teams is counterproductive. But those same players get thrown under the bus. And then the coach, he under heat right now. They calling for his job. You see, it's a losing situation. But they trying to present themselves as Lakers of the past. And this is nowhere near close to who the Lakers have been traditionally. I'm not even talking about the championships. I'm just talking about being a premier franchise. Because as I said, no team is going to win every year. The San Antonio Spurs with Duncan, Ginobili, and Parker, they didn't win a championship every year. Nobody's going to win every year. Showtime Lakers didn't win every year. And they got upset in the playoffs a couple of times during the 80s. So what I'm trying to say is they need to put an end to this. Because if they make another trade to try to bring in another star, well, that all you're doing is kicking the can down the road. And at some point, you have to pay the bill. The bill has to be paid. You see what I'm saying? As they say, someone has to. How can I put this? Because this is so extreme. There's really not a precedent for what's been going on. You've cashed the chips in. You've thrown all the chips in the middle of the table for 6 years straight. You've already cashed those chips in. So now the bill is getting greater and greater, but you don't have the means to pay that bill. So you know what usually happens when the situation occurs in that manner in the finance world? You know what usually happens? You have to file bankruptcy. Have we ever seen a professional sports franchise bankrupt? Now, we've seen teams that have faced years of futility, but this is something unprecedented that we're watching. Because you can be a franchise that's been perennial like losers, but you haven't mortgaged your future off. It's just that you've made bad choices or drafted the wrong players, or maybe even hired the wrong coaches. This is a new realm right here. Because we're talking about a situation where a franchise just 5.5 seasons ago had it all. The young talent, the cap space, the draft picks, and position to attract the right star free agent to anchor that young talent. And this franchise is rolling for the next 10 years. Now you are reeling for the next 10 years. Because you made that one move that has led to the greatest miscalculation in sports. You mortgage away a decade for a player fundamentally needs the deck stacked to win. But his formula is no longer conducive to winning because the league is smarting up and you have a whole body of teams that are rising and sprouting at the same time because they stayed with their youth and development and they're reaping the benefits of that. And that's why the Lakers continue to struggle and will struggle until they put an end to this after this year. So it is what it is. So I just want to drop that nugget. And until next time, this is JB for BTB, Behind the Bench.